I worked 2 jobs and hired a nanny to support my wife. But on Father's Day, she mocked me, saying, "No, woman would want me." I filed for divorce. I am 43, have always done my best to support my wife. F38, our 2 children, 3 and 5, and my mother-in-law. I'd like to think I've done a decent job over the years. I fought to better our family's living conditions. I not only finished another bachelor's degree and just received a master's degree in a STEM-related profession, but I also worked 2 full-time jobs while pursuing my second bachelor's degree. In addition, I helped my wife complete her education. She obtained a degree that allowed her to earn a good living, about $70,000 per year, in a healthcare profession, with numerous career prospects. However, after the birth of our 2 children, she decided to give up her work and become a stay-at-home parent for the time being. Initially, it was difficult for us while I was finishing my master's degree, however. After finishing it, and our youngest turning 3, my work expanded and we were able to live comfortably as a single-income home. While we are far from wealthy, we make do with a household income of roughly $150,000 plus bonuses. This past year, things became hectic for my wife. So even though I now work 75% from home, I budgeted to hire a daytime nanny to help her around the house, and with one child while the other is at school, my day begins every morning at 5:30 or 6 a.m. I get the house ready for the day before the nanny arrives at 8 a.m. I prepare our oldest for school-cooked breakfast and plan my day. I drop off our oldest at school and get back home in time to allow the nanny, and my professional duties have recently required me to work from home for the next 2 months. Therefore, I am now completely remote. While convenient, my days are full of meetings as I manage worldwide teams and oversee industry projects. After a month and a half of working from home, I realized that my wife's routine began considerably later than anticipated. She starts her day about 10 a.m. I asked my mother-in-law and the nanny if this was typical, and they both agreed that it was with minor variations. My wife gets up, cooks briefly, glances through her phone or purchases from home. While I'm delighted I can give her this lifestyle because we both grew up with limited financial resources, it's becoming a source of irritation for me. I recognize the risk of postpartum depression, the burden of having children, and the likelihood that I am not a great husband. However, I have assured that everything is taken care of. And then some. She said she was too busy to manage the home finances. So I pay all of the household payments, my personal bills, her personal bills, as well as my mother-in-law's medical bills and car debt. I also take care of the house appliances, cars, and pets. Despite this, she often implies that my life is easier than hers. Whenever I try to decompress or express my troubles with her, she seems to feel the need to outdo me if I had a horrible day. Hers was far worse. My feet suffer from walking during work trips, but nothing compares to her standing and cooking as a toddler clings to her. For the past few years, she has frequently told me that I have ruined her life and possibilities. But when I remind her of these comments, she rejects them or avoids accountability. My mother-in-law has approached me and indicated that she has observed a difference in both myself and my wife. I've become closer to my children, and I've hugged the dogs and told them more about my life than I have to my wife. I feel like I'm in emotional survival mode, one step away from climbing the corporate ladder and finding love and comfort at the bottom of a whiskey bottle. I'm sure the manly men of Reddit will accuse me of being wimpy, but I'm not a machine. Apart from my children, all I want is to feel acknowledged and loved by someone I prioritize. I'm also confident I'll hear from stay-at-home mothers, which is fine. I understand their challenges because I grew up in a single-parent household, however, with the assistance of her mother and a babysitter 5 days a week for one toddler while the other attends school. Can anyone honestly claim that my wife is facing the traditional problems of a stay-at-home parent? Neither my single-parent friends nor my colleagues would say that. I know the community will probably think this is poorly written fan fiction, but it is what it is. Thank you for your replies. To add some context, I've never cheated. I work in an industry with a huge female population, but I am very open about my profession. My wife has access to my work agendas and correspondence in case she needs to check. However, she still has no idea what I do for a living. We have tried as a family, including her parents and mine, to urge her to attend treatment, but she either refuses or finds ways to avoid it. Unlike me, who grew up in a single mother environment. With some interaction from my biological father, she grew up with both parents in an allegedly monogamous marriage spanning more than 40 years. I've tried to talk to her about everything, even my sentiments, but every conversation has devolved into one-upmanship. I've been questioning myself about what I'm getting out of this marriage. Aside from my two lovely children, there's very little. Our sex life is practically non-existent. Especially since last year, I've tried to be compassionate, figuring it's due to sadness or other issues she's having, but it's difficult not to wonder if I'm unappealing to her or bad in bed. Despite temptations and possibilities, I've never given in because, as cliche as it may seem, I genuinely love my wife and want to be with her only to her credit. I want to avoid being prejudiced. So I'll mention her efforts. She gets up and prepares meals for everyone in the house, myself, the kids, my mother-in-law, and even the nanny. Aside from breakfast, she prepares all other meals and snacks. She does both the kids and her own laundry, but she rarely folds or stores it. I do my own washing and send my work clothing to the dry cleaner. She keeps care of the pantry and fridge while I buy goods and organize delivery. She cleans our bathrooms and house roughly half of the time. The remaining 50% is done by my mother-in-law, myself, or maybe the nanny, if she feels like being especially helpful prior to hiring. The nanny, my mother-in-law, was my wife's primary supporter, but when she developed unanticipated medical issues, I opted to seek more aid. This was especially important when my mother-in-law was receiving treatment and recovering. Mini update. I'm not sure who will read this, but I want to thank everyone who has reached out and offered kind thoughts. I wanted to provide an update the following weekend. I showed my wife this post and all of the comments, and she read them. Long story short, we had a disagreement. She left to live with her sister, and I have been a single parent ever since. Unfortunately, my pattern has remained largely unchanged, with the exception of saying goodnight to the kids. I don't have much else to say except a heartfelt thank you for your words of support. This post has gotten far more than I planned from what began as a vent, but I have still answered to a few comments. Thank you to everyone who offered kind thoughts and even joked about ruining your life. It's been the highlight of my day night as I sit here drinking with my dog while everyone else is asleep. It's a little upsetting to realize that I'm looking to strangers on the internet for validation. Yet here I am. Update 1. First and foremost, thank you for all of your comments and direct messages. I recognized my initial piece was emotionally charged because I wrote it right after another dispute. I would like to add additional context and clarification. Following the birth of both children, my wife underwent postpartum depression screenings at their pediatrician office. She received great marks for both of her children and was advised to seek therapy. Her score improved much more after we had our second child. I made every effort to get her the assistance she required, but she refused my mother-in-law, and nanny stepped in to offer more assistance. I understand that others may blame me for staying in this scenario, but that is one of the reasons I am not ready to give up and file for divorce. I know that silently suffering isn't good, especially for our children, but I'm also concerned that a bitter, hate-filled divorce will leave lasting wounds. Some have compared it to taking off a bandage, claiming that while it will sting at first, the agony will pass. Still, I don't want my kids to believe that their parents hated each other because of them. Or some other mistake I mentioned to a few individuals via DM, that I've been prepared for every what-if situation. As a former project manager who has worked with teams and budgets, planning comes easy to me. As a result, I've consulted with 3 lawyers to better grasp our rights and entitlements. I even have a draft settlement ready and on hold just in case I know what I want. And I'm willing to go above and beyond for the children's welfare, but I also have a backup plan in case we have to go to court. I realize it is entirely my fault that I am suffering in silence, but I am too stubborn to give up. I put up with this to make my children's lives as normal as possible, to guarantee that my mother-in-law's treatments continue uninterrupted, and to keep hoping that my wife will ultimately give therapy a chance and that we may all get to a better place together. Thank you again for your kindness and support. I just wanted to notify those who have contacted me via DMS and comments. I apologize in advance for the lengthy post. It is odd and coincidental that I am writing this follow-up during Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, but I desperately need an outlet other than my therapist. Please accept my apologies if this does not result in the dramatic storybook finale or relationship ruin that some may anticipate. To summarize, my wife left returned as if Nothing had occurred, centered everything around her, and nothing has changed. I'm still suffering mentally, knowing deep down that nothing will get better. But I'm trying to stay strong for the kids. There's been plenty of takeout and emotional weariness. My wife attempted to return the following day and take the children to her sister's residence naturally. I was against it, as was her entire family, including her sister. It wasn't fair to remove our children from their home, nor was it fair to inflict financial and housing burden on her family, especially because my wife doesn't work. Her sister already had a spouse and 3 children, so adding 2 more was not an option. Fortunately, the children stayed with me at the house, they know. After a little more than a week, my wife appeared to have cooled off and believed it was okay to simply walk back into the home with her luggage, as if she had just returned from a fast trip to Target. She came into my office when I was on a conference call with my colleagues. I couldn't immediately drop everything because it was such a busy period of the quarter, which annoyed her after I concluded the call and closed my laptop. She started ranting at me about how much I don't care about her or her health. I could only gaze at her and shake my head. My mother-in-law heard the commotion and dragged her away, urging her to quit pestering me. Meanwhile, the nanny kept our smallest child out of the fight. In another room of the house that night, once the kids were sleeping, I sat alone in my office with a drink. Like I had done most nights lately, my wife entered and we spoke, argued, sobbed, and drank together. One thing led to another, and we found ourselves in bed. I wish I could say it was a time of reconciliation, but the following morning was sobering in more ways than one. As we lay there, she began talking, not about us, but about how terrible her absence had been. She discussed her difficulties staying at her family's home. In her old room with her father and her sister's family, she went on to say how fortunate I am to be able to stay in our house, do what I do, and not be as stressed as she or her family. She compared her trials to everyone else's easy existence, despite the fact that we had identical childhoods that morning. My head and heart broke, and I've been on a downward spiral. Ever since in the last week, I attempted to reconcile and have a meaningful talk. I wanted to communicate my present stress and fears about life and job in general, but the conversation quickly turned into a shouting fight. My response was, I'm struggling too. Doesn't my happiness, stress, or overall well-being matter to you? Her response, do you know how hard this is for me? You're supposed to help me be happy, I replied. So when it comes to my happiness, stress, and needs, I'm supposed to just get over it, right? My spouse. We all have our own problems. You need to figure it out and get over them. I don't recognize the woman I live with anymore. She is not the person I married or promised to spend my life with and raise our children with. Since that chat, I've become increasingly distant. I've been sleeping at my office on the couch or in my children's beds after putting one to sleep. Still, it doesn't change the reality that my wife starts her day at 10 a.m., talks on the phone with her mom groups and cooks meals. While my mother-in-law and nanny care for the kids, nothing has changed, and I doubt that it ever will. Unfortunately, I believe that even if we divorced, nothing would change because my wife's departure caused little disruption other than more takeout meals. My biggest worry is not just losing my wife, but also losing my children in the process. It's sad to admit that, like many of the men and women I've spoken with here, I'll continue to smile and suffer. In silence, update number 2, I am done at Father's Day dinner. My wife told the therapist in our family that I don't do enough. She was served with divorce papers right then and there. She's furious, of course, and is attempting to act flawless right now while I continue to care for our children, my mother and my mother-in-law. Well, if that means ruining her perfect existence, then so be it. Second, to clear up any confusion, I did not earn 2 BAT board degrees and a master's degree while working 2 full-time jobs, as some readers have believed. Here's what truly happened. Bachelor's number 1. I graduated in the early 2000s. Bachelor's degree 2. I completed it later through online courses, taking 2 classes every semester while working 2 full-time jobs. One at a hospital, 36 to 48 hours per week, and the other at a big box shop, 32 to 40 hours per week, spread over 7 days. I took on these jobs to cover both my and my wife's tuition when she wanted to return to school before we had children master's degree. After earning my second bachelor's degree and entering my present industry, I worked 1 job, while also pursuing my master's. No, I did not complete 3 degrees at once, and I'm amazed I even have to explain. This working 2 jobs while in school is not uncommon. At least I didn't believe it was my wife prefers not to work. Despite the fact that she technically has a job, she scarcely works, and we sometimes forget she has one. For example, she only worked one 8-hour shift around 5 months ago. Her manager, who is very supportive, gives her with flexible PRN scheduling and a list of days when she can pick up work. She simply chooses not to work anymore. Despite this, she constantly complains to our family about how her career is on hold for one reason or another, despite the fact that she has ample opportunities to work if she so desires. Considering everything, she has a strong network to rely on, whether it's our family, her career, or me. I've made several offers and taken considerable measures to facilitate her return to work, such as hiring a nanny, having my mother-in-law move in, and keeping a work-from-home schedule to accommodate her. Still, here we are. I am already in therapy for myself because my job can be psychologically and physically demanding, since I can't receive the support I need at home. Mentally or physically, I've chosen therapy over seeking consolation elsewhere at the bottom of a bottle. I've tried to explain my concerns to my wife, but as I indicated in my earlier piece, she has a history of outperforming me. And here we are. My in-laws are still married. Given the conditions in our household, my mother-in-law moved in to help my wife, while my sister-in-law and her family returned to their parents' home. For personal reasons, this agreement allows my sister-in-law and her family to save money as they rebuild their lives, and my wife and I benefit from my mother-in-law's assistance, allowing us to keep a closer eye on her while she receives her bi-monthly treatments. My wife is suspected of having postpartum depression, PPD, based on questionnaire results. As well as a history of symptomatic OC and ADHD, among other ailments, she has repeatedly declined evaluations and denied the outcomes. I knew what I was getting into when I married her, and I loved and accepted my wife's imperfections as much as she did mine. At least at the moment, spare me. I don't feel sorry for you and I pity you. I am just like any other man who fell in love and wanted to give his person the best of himself in the world he could provide. But again, here we are. There are many manly men out there, or members of the so-called Red Pill Nation, who may blame me for remaining in this scenario. While I understand different points of view, I'll be honest, if this scenario had simply touched my life, I would have left long ago. But as one Redditor once stated, in a previous comment that remained with me, I am the kind of person who will take a bullet for his kids. Perhaps this was said in a different context, but to protect my children from harm, whether physical or mental, I would take the proverbial bullet if necessary. I'd like to think that other fathers feel the same responsibility to protect their children. That is why I have endured so much for the time being. I'd rather my wife utilize me as an outlet for whatever her troubles are, rather than projecting her negativity onto our children. Thank you all for your comments and support. I've met a lot of strangers who've turned into excellent Reddit pen friends, and some of them have followed my adventure from start to finish. I'm shocked at how far this has spread across many subreddits and platforms, whether you love me, loathe me, or think it's all a lie. Thank you for all of your critical feedback and DMS. My children and I are going to be fine. Moving forward now for an update. The end of an era. This will be shorter than some of you imagined, as there isn't much left to say other than to answer lingering questions and give Reddit the I told you. So, moment after a strong push from relatives and an intervention, my wife and I eventually tried marriage counseling. I'm sure many of you can predict how it went. Blame, tears, regrets, and gaslighting with a side of, I am the reason her life is ruined and horrible this time. However, it happened in front of a certified therapist rather than her Redditor mom groups. Finally, whatever the therapist suggested or noted went over her head and was ignored because it contradicted her current situation. One thing to note is that the therapist asked my wife to recollect the last time she felt truly joyful. How did she respond about 12 or so years ago? Let me point out that 12 years ago, she was still in her 20s, childless and living with her ex. It was a very different period and situation in her life. I know it's petty of me, but if that's when she was last happy, it's not impossible for her to find happiness again, especially because her ex is still in the same apartment, job, and position in life as he was 12 years ago. That is okay if you choose to spend your life that way. But what about me? Going clubbing 3 to 4 days a week in my 40s with kids is no longer fun for me. Of course, I do not want my children to be. Do not around a mother and company who are obsessed with white claws to clarify my wife has not physically cheated on me as far as I know. However, I cannot say for certain whether she has been emotionally unfaithful, if that is the correct term. After the therapy session, I reviewed her phone records and found nothing strange, but I didn't bother checking applications like Instagram and Snapchat. I know I'm probably boring, but kudos to all the Costco parents that spend Sunday Fun Day making rounds with their kids for samples. The next weekend was Father's Day. As expected, it was not a grand celebration, as it is for many fathers out there. Our family gathered together for a cookout and some quality family time, but my wife treated it like any other day, sleeping in, cooking, shopping, on her phone, and half-heartedly attempting to play with the kids during the family barbecue. My wife complained of feeling poorly and hung about for the majority of the day while the rest of the family enjoyed themselves when everything was set up. And we were all seated at the table. Her parents, her sister's family, my mother, and our children. It was a fantastic spread. Nothing extravagant, just a lovely supper for everybody. I was talking to my brother-in-law about our kids' school Father's Day events, and I believe my wife overheard me express how sad it was to see some kids sitting alone at the breakfast with dad event I attended. She burst out laughing. "It's not like you do anything anyway. I could have gone instead." I was surprised, embarrassed, and at a loss for words. The room became silent. My mother-in-law broke the awkward silence by saying, "Well, maybe if you feel that way, one of you should divorce the other." My wife looked at her mother puzzled and then chuckled mockingly in my direction. She pointed at me and said, "As if another woman would want a man like him, just look at you." The room stayed silent. I felt angry, heartbroken, puzzled, and ashamed, all at once in classic manly man fashion. I nodded quietly, stood up, grabbed my keys, and exited the house. I drove away to fetch a drink, ignoring the pleas of my family and my children who begged me to stay. I'm not sure what was said or done while I was away, because I couldn't force myself to check the house cameras. When I returned early Monday morning, the house had a completely different atmosphere. As usual, I woke at 6 a.m., prepared the house and our oldest for school drop-off, checked emails, and nothing seemed out of place as I was getting ready to go. I noticed my wife lying in our bed, quietly snoring. All I could do was gaze at her and reflect on what we had and what we've lost. I've decided I'm finished. I can't do it anymore that morning. I texted my lawyer to proceed with delivering her divorce papers fast forward to last week, and she was served in our home. I had no choice but to be there because I work from home. She had a mini meltdown coming into my office and screaming, "How could you do this to me?" Her mother intervened, sparking charges that I had turned her entire family against her. I probably would have felt guilty if she hadn't immediately gone on to act like the perfect wife and mother for the remainder of the week. Sure, folks may say she's making an attempt, but this has always been fleeting. And we wind up right back where we started. For those who are curious, I intend to seek full or majority custody of our children. I've already committed to continuing to pay for their expenses, including insurance tuition. Both kids will be attending private schools in the fall, medical bills, and more. My mother-in-law has been a rock of strength for me. Supplementing my own mother's support during this journey, she has been the mother and wife that I wish my wife had been for me and our children. Out of respect for her and my mother's wishes, I will continue to supervise and contribute financially to her therapies. While some may believe I should cut off all contact with my wife's family, I am well aware of the difficulties associated with cancer and have direct experience as a caregiver. I'm willing to go to court if necessary, but all I want is a clean, simple divorce. My wife will not receive alimony, unlike what some Redditors and mommy groups believe. First, we live in a state where alimony is not frequently enforced. Second, she has the ability to find instant employment. Third, to avoid any problems, I will continue to pay her insurance and bills until the divorce is finalized or she gets full employment. So, that's it. I'm finished and waiting for the next steps to complete everything. Sorry if this wasn't the dramatic twist-filed story you were expecting, but that's life. I'm not sure if I'll update until everything is finished, but it'll probably be a few months depending on whether we go to court. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell. to stay updated with more shocking real life stories happening around you.